All right. Start off with certainly the best thing for our team is to get back on the practice field and begin getting ready for Virginia Tech. It's certainly for our team focusing on what has gotten us the success over the past 3 years is building back our identity as a football team, and that is focusing on our process and the standards that we have set in the program. We got away from that this past weekend, and we'll work diligently in putting those things back in the forefront and exhibiting that this Saturday against a very good Virginia Tech team that's playing very, very well. Certainly on pace to find themselves at the top of the league. So a great challenge in front of us, which we're excited for. Obviously the quarterback situation seems to be clarifying itself. The last 3 games, Hendon Hooker is really, playing great football for him. He got banged up in the North Carolina game, but appears to be back. We're preparing for him. Dual threat quarterback, really good runner, and an exciting player that's really sparked their offense. So, I think, we obviously played against Willis, but I think even, Patterson late in the game, showed a similar kind of athleticism, and it certainly seems that that's the direction that they're going offensively. And again, I think that's kind of what they're looking for, that kind of offensive structure. We remember, it's a younger offensive line, but I think this really suits in terms of what they want to do offensively with a dual threat. Hazelton's kind of, coming into his own. He's got, I think, 5 touchdown catches. I think he's got like 10 total, so he's still a threat. We remember him from last year. Some young players that are exciting, athletic. And they've put up over 30 points over the last 3 games. So an offense that will certainly challenge us. Defensively, Bud Foster again, legendary defensive coach that has really settled this unit down since the Duke game, and they're playing much better defensively. They're still an attacking, aggressive defense. Defensively, 4 out of the 6 returners up front. And again, I think unquestionably the linebacker, Ashby, is one of the best we've seen. A little undersized, people might say, but he is all over the field. Athletic, can do a lot of things, just an outstanding player. And so we're going to have to know where he is because he lines up in a number of different positions. He's blitzing, but he can do a lot of different things. I really like their corners. Farley, we saw last year. He's done a really nice job as he continues to get the assignments against the very best wide receivers play in and play out. Waller's the other very good corner. I think they've got 3 picks apiece on each side. So very good secondary guys that can play man-to-man. I'm sure they're going to try to match them up with our guys. And again, a pressure defense that has really done a nice job over the last few weeks. So it'll be a great challenge. We're at home. Again, we've played well. We're going to have to get back to really who we are and our standards. We do that. We should be playing the kind of football that we've played over the last 3 years. So with that, open it up to questions.
Brian, you mentioned Tony Jones' status yesterday. We didn't get a chance to ask you about Tommy Kramer, following up also on Michael Young. And I'm not sure if Pride got nicked up in that game or went back in or what.
Pride's not on the injury report. Mike Young is in the transfer portal. Just got that from compliance a few hours ago. Tony Jones, upper body injury, but he is expected to practice on Tuesday.
What about Tommy Kramer?
Oh, he has a MCL sprain.
Which would?
I mean, those are anywhere from, you know, could be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, depending on, you know, each guy is different, but no surgery necessary.
And would Rulon be the long-term solution there?
Yes.
Okay.
Rulon and Lug, both those guys will play.
Okay. Jafar's been back a couple of games now. Just wonder.
I would really call it one game.
Okay, one
He
game.
had 3 snaps in the USC game.
But he didn't have that many touches in the Michigan game. I'm just wondering his opportunities, his production. I mean, was it just because of the conditions that maybe he didn't get more? And the second part of that question is there a role for Avery Davis as Jafar kind of finds his footing?
You know, we had 9 3-and-outs, so, you know, you could probably try to find those carries, you know, in those situations. You know, I think he's still finding himself. You know, it's, you know, a young man that's been out for a while, trying to get back in the flow of the game. I think he'll be better as we kind of go down the line here and get him involved in the game more. We expect a little bit more from him each week. We like what Avery Davis is bringing to our offense. He needs to play more. We expect to get him into the game more, but I think your observations are right in both instances. Jafar, as he gets more, I think, comfortable in the game and getting contact. Remember, he was without contact really for, you know, upwards of 8 weeks. So I think once he gets through that, and then, you know, every time we see Avery Davis, he starts to, you know, he gets our attention. And I think that has prompted us to really force him into more competitive situations as we move forward.
Brian, there's a criticism that floats out there when quarterbacks struggle here that they haven't gotten better in year 2. Do you think that's unfair? Do you think it's a fair observation? And where do you feel like Ian Book is in that context?
Well, I think anytime the quarterback doesn't play, you know, up to a standard that he has and others have for him, he's going to be in the spotlight. It comes with the position. You know, I don't know that anybody really played well or coached well on Saturday, including Ian. So is it fair? Sure, I think it's fair criticism of everybody, including me. So, yeah, I think we all have to coach better. I think we all have to play better.
Brian, after the game, you said that you thought Michigan was more physical.
Are we going to get to Virginia Tech? I mean, that game's past us, so this will be the last question on Michigan.
Was there anything from during the bye week in which, you know, you may have been compromised in terms of your physicality on Saturday night?
You know, Tim, I've been doing this a long time, and you know, you try to gauge your preparation based upon things that you've done in the past, and try to you know, look at all of the different things that go into preparing for an opponent. But at the end of the day, you've got to match your preparation with game time, I guess, emotional readiness. And, you know, we didn't match them. Michigan was all over the field. We got what we deserved. Michigan outplayed us. They out-hustled us. They were more physical. They out-coached us. And, you know, those things, unfortunately, are the realities of it. And I don't know that because we were off that caused us not to be physical. I think that you know, we got away from our identity, and our identity is to be gritty. Our identity is to play smart. Our identity is to be locked in, and we were not, and we got to get back to our identity.
Last year when you made the change at quarterback, Ian Book was flashing in practice enough, apparently, obviously, to warrant that move. Have you seen, is Phil Jurkovec doing anything in practice right now that would be comparable to what you saw with the Book Wimbush situation last year?
They're totally different, Tim, in a sense that, Ian is a different quarterback than Brendan was, and so it's hard to compare and contrast those two. They're really quite different. Phil obviously sees the field very well. He's tall, he's rangy, he's 6'5", he's got a strong arm. We like him, as a quarterback. But I don't know that there's any appetite. There isn't for mine. There is no quarterback controversy. There isn't any kind of conversation about making a change. Ian Book is our starter, will be our starter, and Phil will continue to be ready if he's called upon.
After an 8 for 25 game, obviously a tough night for a lot of guys, but your quarterback, what's the next step with him in terms of just you communicating with him to get him back moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all the things that you saw. I mean, we have to, continue to work on going through your progressions, hanging in there. We had some key drops. We need all 11 guys to play better, quite frankly. We didn't lose that game because of Ian Book. He's got to play better, no doubt. But the things that we've been talking about for the last few weeks, he's got to continue to work on.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Brian, you mentioned Trevor Rulin. How did you evaluate his performance filling in for Tommy?
We thought he did very well for a guy that had not played all year. We liked his activity, working up to the second level on backers, which we did not do a great job of. We're pleased with his work obviously at a situation where he had to come in, right off the bench.
And you've mentioned physicality a couple times in terms of what was lacking against Michigan. In terms of the offensive line play, is it as simple as that, or were there missed blocks, missed technique? Or is it just they got to be better in terms of bringing that physicality?
We got to be better, and it was all around. I mean, there was new lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I mean, look, the basic tenets of this game haven't changed. You control a line of scrimmage, you really have a great chance of winning football games, and Michigan controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides. Our job now is to get back and get to Virginia Tech and control the line of scrimmage. If we do that, we have a chance of winning, and that's really our focus moving forward.
And with Ian, when you evaluate some of the issues he's had from a week-to-week basis, are there any concerns that some of those issues are what he is and he can't correct those because they're repeating, or is there glimpses of hope that you feel like these things are correctable that can be changed mid-season?
No, I mean, we're coaches, we're teachers, we're so much more optimistic than you folks are. I mean, we believe that Ian Book is a young man that is going to work on the things necessary to be, the kind of quarterback we want him to be. And he's won a lot of games, we didn't win last week. I get it. And we're all disappointed, but we're going to move on, and we're going to learn from it. We're going to be humbled because of it, and we're going to get back to being who we are. And it happens. I think Ohio State lost 49-20 last year to Purdue, and they did okay after that. I mean, I'm sure it was a bad week in Columbus that week, just like it's going to be a bad week here in South Bend. I get that. But we're going to keep coaching. This game teaches you great lessons. That's why I get it. Winning is important, and our nation wants to win, and I want to win too. But you can learn great lessons from this game too, and our guys learned some lessons. Our coaches learned from it. I've learned from it, and we're going to carry those things moving forward.
Brian, to your left.
Yeah.
With Young out, this seems like a week where McKinley, Keys, and Lindsey specifically could really make progress or step up into different roles. Do you kind of have a plan going in, or do you want to take a fresh look of 4 days of those guys and see how to work them in?
No, they all have to be involved. I thought, I thought it would be nice to catch a couple of balls here and there. We got Lawrence in the game, and it might have been a little bit of a low throw, but we'd like to see him make that catch. And we got to keep getting them in competitive situations. And, we know what Javon can do. Obviously, he's really good on the outside. And I just think that they all have to be in the rotation in some fashion. So we'll continue to get them involved as we move forward. They're younger players, except for Javon. Obviously, he's just young in experience, but older in terms of being in the program. They all have to be involved, and we got to keep working them in there.
You mentioned there's the possibility of a rough week of practice. This is the first one in 2 years where your team isn't in line for a playoff berth going into the week of practice. I know you don't sit around talking about the playoffs when you're practicing on Tuesday, but is that something you're cognizant of when you see how the early portion of practice week is going? That
No, there's so much more at stake here. This is so much more about who you are as a person and who we are as individuals. And, playoffs, bowl games, all kind of get put aside, after weeks like that. And you really start to focus on who you are as a person and what's your why, why you're doing this. and that's so much more important after a week like we had.
Back in the spring, Coach Long mentioned how with Ian, he was working more on calculus, and with Phil, it was more just some of the basic math.
Is that what he said?
How, I don't know.
Well, we'll use that analogy.
But where have you seen progress in Phil where he would be capable of giving a challenge to Ian? Because next year Ian could be back, and there's going to be debates again about, well, can he take Notre Dame to the next level?
Well, I think I think what we're interested in is both of those guys to continue to develop, and we put them in competitive situations each week, so it's ongoing. I mean, they don't stop growing, just because one is 1 and 1 is 2. They're still in competitive situations during the practice week. So I think that Phil has gotten better and will continue to get better, and he's challenging Ian every single day, even if you guys don't, see it. Just because he's 2 doesn't mean he's not challenging Ian and making him better every day in practice. So, how that fits the analogy, we think that he is better as a football player and a quarterback than he was when camp started. So we just hope that continues to move in the right direction, and we're pretty confident it will.
What are the areas that you see in Phil that need to upgrade the most to where he can create that type of challenge?
Well, he hasn't played a lot of real football. It's been a lot of practice football. It's an incredible game, right? You practice, and then you play only 12 games. He's practiced a lot and hasn't played a lot in college. And so he's really missing that college. It's faster, and so that's really all he's missing right now. I mean, in practice he looks pretty good, but, it's getting to that point where he actually plays in some of the games and making those quick decisions, changing protections, making some quick decisions. Those are the things that, he's going to have to continue to work on.
You've never been shy in the past about when it's time to make a change, or you feel it is, at the quarterback position. You did that in the Music City Bowl, obviously with a month to prepare, and that was different. And you had Ian in for some short yardage situations last year. Have you contemplated anything about maybe getting Phil that type of time, perhaps, to
we consider if I felt like playing Phil for 4 plays would make us a better football team, I would do it in a second. I'm only interested in how I can help our football team win. This is not about an ego or we got to play 1 guy or 2 guys. I want to just win football games by playing the best players that will help us win. And if I thought for a second that Phil Jakovic would be on the field to help us winning in some fashion, he would be on the field. And that's as honest as I can be with you.
Thank you.
Jameer Smith, what do you like about where his game is? How does he give you something a little bit different than Tony Jones and Jafar Armstrong?
Well, he's really progressed in pass protection. He showed that on Saturday on a couple of nice pickups for us. So some reliability and trust, first of all, is an important piece of this whole picture at the running back. The second thing, he's got good vision. He can see a jump cut. He knows when to spill it outside. And he's got a burst, a quick, first step burst. Runs hard. We thought he's been hit and miss a little bit in terms of catching the football, but he came up with a nice catch on Saturday with contact. So we think he's making good progress from that perspective. Pass protection, which equals trust, pretty good vision through the hole, and then a burst. And I don't know if that makes him different than Tony, but he's starting to exhibit some of the traits necessary to gain more trust.
With all the questions you've got about the quarterback position today, how do you look at this from a coaching perspective? Where do you sit there and say, all right, maybe we got to find some different ways to accentuate Ian Book's strengths than what we've been doing for the last 4 weeks?
Yeah, so we lost the game, and you have to look at everything: the quarterback, the safety, the middle linebacker, the offensive line, everybody. But then you have to also sit down and look at, all right, where are we at the quarterback position as well, and what can we do as teachers, and what can we do to put him in a position to keep advancing our offense. And those are the discussions that we have Sundays and Mondays as we lead into our preparation. So, yeah, those discussions take place because they need to take place because that's our job. If we're not having those discussions and you guys are having them, you should take our jobs, quite frankly. So, yeah, those are in-depth conversations that should take place, that do take place, and we take it serious that we have to look at all those things, and they have to be vetted out each and every day as we move forward to improving our football team.
Is it fair to look at Ian's play from the standpoint of, all right, the first 5 games against Power 5 teams, he was great. That teams have sort of figured out how you like to play him, that you have to find a counterpunch to that now?
We don't necessarily see that as being the case. We think that there are things for him to improve upon. We think that there are plays that he will need to grow with for our offense to continue to get better. He knows that, and he's been challenged, just like Jalen Elliott's been challenged, just like Alohi Gilman. They've all been challenged. That we've got a bit. Chip Long's been challenged. All of our coaches have been challenged that we need to be better.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Brian, you guys haven't lost consecutive games since the end of the 2016 season. Was there something after that 2016 season that you worked on to maybe prevent you from losing consecutive games? Is there like a different mindset coming off a loss, going into a practice week like that?
There's a lot of changes that we made within the program, just with our identity and our standards within the program to make certain. Obviously we were dealing with, an interim defensive coordinator. There were a lot of different things. We lost, I think, to this Virginia Tech team 34-31. Might have been the last time we lost to an ACC team at home. So, yeah, a lot of different things. But, as I mentioned earlier at the outset, this is about our football team getting back to their identity and the standards that have gotten them to this point. We got away from it. It's time to get back to it.
And there going to be any adjustments with the rush defense? I know Michigan ran for 300 yards. So do you look at the tape and there are adjustments you might make this week against Virginia Tech?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not coming out with a new defense. We're going to come out with a defense that is much more focused on their job and attention to their detail, as we've talked about ad nauseum. Much more physicality, but our guys know what they need to do, and that is they've got to reclaim their identity. And we lost it. We're going to get it back. And we've already addressed that.
Brian, you talked a lot about getting back to your identity. Have you pinpointed why you did not play to your identity?
You know, that's the great question in competitive sports as to why teams sometimes lose that edge, or they don't stick with the script, especially one that's worked so well. So, you know, you come back and you hope that lessons are learned, that consistency in your approach and sticking with things is a great life lesson, and that hopefully that you can carry on and understand how important it is to have these traits that will show success for you.
Is that something as a coaching staff you can pinpoint after a few days, or is that a bigger picture thing that you have to go look back to after several weeks, or maybe at the end of a season of, okay, why did this happen against Michigan? Why did this happen against Miami?
You know, Miami was a different story. We turned the ball over 7 times in that game and just got away from us. This was a kind of a different scenario. No, I think our players clearly understand. We have a lot of veterans on this team that have already been in my office and addressed the fact that they know exactly what needs to be done. And the great part about it is the word that kind of brings everybody together at the end of the day is, are you accountable or you're not accountable? Are we accountable as coaches, and are we accountable as players? And if everybody's accountable, then you get up and you get going again. You know, you know, it's how you're going to deal with the adversity that you just were hit with. And I'm very confident our guys are accountable guys, and I know our staff is, and we'll get back to work.
And finally, human nature is certainly a big part of sports, and outside distractions can be a major factor, especially for students as they're going to class and everything. How do you isolate your guys to make sure that everything that's swirling around doesn't affect them in practice and in the game this week?
Oh, they're used to it. I mean, they know they have to avoid the noise, and they won't be defined by one game. They've got a great opportunity in the month of November. You know, they can be remembered by winning the month of November. If they win the month of November, the noise will change. All will be happy.